Hi there, and welcome back to the fourth and final bonus episode in this summer 2025 series, archival recordings from IHS 40 in Denver, Colorado. If you're just picking up with this series, I highly encourage you to go back and start with number one of these Pedagogical Pearl panel sessions put together by Douglas Hill at the symposium in Denver, Colorado in 2008. It's really quite a goldmine of information from some really knowledgeable people in the horn world. So in this fourth and final set here, we've got a lot of different people. I'm assuming I was not at IHS Denver, but maybe somebody who was there can kind of correct me. It seems like the way these are categorized, these all happened at the same time, consecutively, one after another. So you're going to hear from Jeffrey Agrell on performance needs and specific approaches to that. Then you're going to hear from Jonathan Stoneman discussing his practice routines and his online survey. Then you'll hear from Douglas Lundeen's lecture entitled Toward a Bel Canto Approach to the Horn. Which is very interesting. You get to hear him sing as well as play a little bit. And then you'll hear Bruno Schneider talk about the workings of European conservatories. And then that's followed by Q&A from the audience answered by Bruno Schneider, Douglas Lundeen, and Jeffrey Agrell. So I hope that you've enjoyed this series. This is something I wanted to do this summer to kind of fill in the gaps between our monthly episodes and build us up a little bit towards IHS 57, which is coming up very soon at James Madison University. I hope to see some of our listeners out there. Feel free to come up and chat. I'd love to speak with you about anything related to the horn or the Horn Call podcast. So I wish we could do these every week, but I do plan to do a little bit more of this kind of stuff, digging back through some of our archived audio. If you have suggestions or comments or questions on any of this, feel free to get in touch with me, editor@hornsociety.org.
Let me say something really obvious, and that's just about everybody in the room has had very similar experience, whatever your level. We all spend a lot of time in the practice room, working very hard on this wonderful and tricky instrument. And then, just about all of us have had the chance to go out in public and see where we are, see what happens. And I don't know if you've noticed it, but it's different. It's different when you suddenly are facing that way on a stage than when you're in your practice room. And this is varying degrees for various people, but a lot of the time it's, you say, what is this strange lump of metal in my hands? I don't think I've ever seen this before. What is this elephant sitting in my chest? It's different, and it's not necessarily a good kind of different. It's actually, we treat it usually as one event, one thing, standing on stage, facing out, and working on all those technical things, musical things. But it's really two very different things. Just standing here and being able to recite your name or something simple, all of a sudden is not so simple. But I wanted to boil down some ideas that might make it a little simpler. And if you just follow along on the sheet there are, to me, it's a three-legged stool with three things you need to do anything, not just horn, but anything well. First one, the prerequisite is being calm, without tension, being relaxed. And it's very easy to let that creep up and get more and more intense, and you hardly even know it. The second one is being focused and alert on what's going on. So you're not thinking about, let's see, I have to do the laundry tomorrow, and I have to check my, lots of distractions in modern living. But when you're doing something special, some art, some special motion of any kind, You need to be there now. The future is not there, no past, just what's going on right now. You're focused on it, nothing else. And the last one, which might be the most difficult of the three, is detaching your ego from the results of what happened. Here's a trick question. What do you feel when you make a mistake? When you're playing along? The inevitable plan shows up. Okay, that was a rhetorical question, trick question. Of course, the answer is nothing. Because it's not about feeling something. It's not about your ego. You don't have to feel pride or disappointment. It's about focusing on the job at hand. Later in the bar, if you want to slam down a few extra ones because you missed that first note of the solo, go ahead. But at the time, this doesn't help. Be relaxed, be focused, and whatever happens has nothing to do with your ego. As if you remember that Rudyard Kipling poem, If, there's a wonderful line in there, if you can meet triumph and disaster and treat these two imposters just the same. They're the same. Because getting it right, like a golf swing, is just as bad as getting it wrong. Because when you get it right, you go, oh boy, I'm 3/4 of the way through the concert, and I haven't missed a single Just as dangerous. So you don't need to flagellate yourself or go, wait, do that later. Okay? Just stay in the moment and don't be confused. Since this is a very compressed little speech here, I'll have to jump along here. I just wanted to mention one book that you might read if you're not familiar with. Zen and the Art of Archery describes someone learning these three things in another context. He was a German philosophy professor, this is Eugen Agrell. I think it was in the 1950s. He went to Japan to study Zen. And they said, silly professor, you can't study Zen. You can only do something that embodies it. And he said, well, I like to shoot, then I'll try something with shooting. Archery, let's try that. And he had a very hard time with it because he kept doing it the way he was accustomed. He has ego involved. Read the book, it's a small book, big print, you can read it in an afternoon. I think it was about the third time through before I figured out what the hell he was talking about, but I'm sure you'll do much better than I did. Now let's just go through this very simple, quick ritual. The good news about this kind of preparation for any kind of performance, not just horn, public speaking, origami, I don't know, anything, is the same. You can practice it, but you have to practice it. It's easy to pass it up. What book is there on the market that doesn't start with okay, here's the note, play the note. They should start with getting you in the mental state and the physical state for doing that first. But nobody thinks about that. That's Western culture. Folks, you're fighting all of Western culture, which is product of a process. If at first you don't succeed brilliantly right away, quit or apologize. Tension is built into the culture. But it's money in the bank if you can somehow fight all that and do the process. Here's a quick little ritual. You can do it. You can do it in 1 minute. A little longer is better, but if you can do it in 1 minute, we can all do it right now. First thing is to sit upright. I don't think you can probably even do it in those seats. Just sit straight up so that your spine carries the weight, so you're not sitting back like this. If the muscles are carrying the weight, because of strength through the top of your head. It's easier to stay focused this way. We want to be relaxed, but we don't want to be asleep. Okay, we don't want to be asleep. And then just rest your hands on your legs, something like that. Very comfortable. Do a quick inventory of tension. Start in your big toes. Close your eyes. Vision is a big bully. It distracts us from what we should be thinking about. Okay, just check. Go up through your feet. You don't have to do anything. Don't do anything. Just observe it. It will take care of itself. Okay, up through the calves, through the knees. All the time we should be breathing. Breathing will release tension. Breathe from your belly button. Okay, get your attention moving up through the shoulders. This is a repository of great tension through the neck and the head. Now, if we had time, I would suggest that you had time, give yourself a little quick massage, neck, face, like that. Then the next thing is to focus on one thing. It could be your breath. I like that. I'll put a little rasp in it. You can think of a word, a nice sounding word. Or you can have an object. Some people like a candle, pick a whole note, a spot on the floor, it doesn't matter. And then just very passively, if your eyes are open or if your eyes are closed with your breath, follow that. Keep that up. Keep your mind on that. Do it for a minute. See if you can manage to keep your mind on it for a minute without your thoughts straying. It's not easy. If your thoughts stray, just come back to the object of your attention and stay there for a minute, and then now you're ready. You've dealt with the tension, you've dealt with focus, you practice it. If you can do this every time, you'll be in better shape for when you have to stand on stage and face everybody, go through your little routine, and you will be able to do what you need to do much better. Thank you.
When Doug Hill was asking for possible contributions to this forum by email, my mind went back to a forum I'd been to about a year and a half ago in Britain. And the pro who was doing the session asked the audience, who here has got a warm-up book or has a warm-up routine? And pretty much all the hands went up. He said, now who's got a practice routine? What do you do when you've warmed up? All the hands stayed down. He said, yeah, that's the same question I've been asking myself. He hadn't got an answer. And by the end of that session, he hadn't got an answer either from anybody. So I've been thinking about that on and off for about a year and a half, and that came an opportunity to think about it. And also I did an online survey, which I'll come back to in a moment. So that's the big thing. What do you do when you're warmed up? Whether you warm up in 2 minutes and you've got 28 minutes left to do something, or you warm up in half an hour and you've got 2.5 hours left of practice today. What are you going to do now? Incidentally, somebody somewhere has calculated that to master any craft, whether that's pottery, violin playing, horn playing, painting, whatever, takes 10,000 hours of study on your own. Those individual things take 10,000. So no wonder none of us is getting any better. It's just the clock is ticking. So we're going to have to use those 10,000 hours pretty effectively. I know I'm surrounded by people who already have done that quite effectively. There is a tendency, I think, for people to use the whole practice thing as a routine, to have it like a workout. Like going down to the gym, there is a sort of lung and lip and finger workout you can give, which makes you feel pretty good. The same things are being released as going on the treadmill or whatever. You're doing all the right things. But the word routine niggles me slightly, that it's a word that sounds ordinary and repetitive, and it's good to do a lot of repetitive things. But if you don't stretch out and find what's beyond what you repeat, then you'll only be able to do what you can do. You'll never, you're not using your 10,000 hours very well. There are a lot of routines on the market, that's clear. There's Stanley and Frasney and several others. And a lot of people have got them. And of course, a lot of us start off with Farkas and work our way through that. There was a guy I knew this guy's teacher before I knew him, but he used to turn up for his lessons each week and his pieces just weren't getting any better. His stamina was good. And his actual articulation, everything was good, but his teacher got puzzled after a few lessons and said, why isn't this piece any better? He was doing the entire Farkas warm-up, and then he was too tired to do anything else. So you have to think it through. So as I said, I did an online survey. Some of you may have taken part in it. It was advertised on the Horn Society website. And what was very interesting to me was that I got 95 responses. I asked people various questions. Do you warm up? How much of your time do you spend warming up? How much time do you practice? Do you have a routine? Do you do the same thing every day? And I got about 95, 96 responses. If you're here, thank you very much. And roughly half and half were pro and half were amateur. Or student wanting to be pro. And the pattern was actually the same for both groups, that there was no strong pattern. I half expected the pros to say, yep, I do this, I do that, and then I go to work. Or I'm too busy doing my work to practice, which is a common complaint of professionals, that they're too busy playing in the pit or in the studio and they don't get time to really practice the horn. But no, there were lots of little splinter groups. There were some people saying, yep, I do exactly the same thing every day. There were some people who had a workout, a real workout, and they went through Caruso and Stanley and everything, and then tore their face off. And the next question, I suppose, which you can't politely ask an online, so, well, how good are you? What's happening now? And yet, one thing which came around time and time again, if there was any pattern, was a lot of people said, well, it works for me. Works for me is an interesting phrase. You could be Dennis Brain and say it works for me, and clearly it did. But it's a sort of liberating phrase, because it means, well, you don't have to do my routine, because mine works for me, but you get your own routine. Or you could say it's quite an infuriating thing, because there's a sort of mystery there. There's somebody doing something which works for them, and if you don't share it, what is it? Can you copy it? Should you copy it? Should you find your own routine? Clearly, being a sort of liberal white Englishman, I tend to think you do your own thing anyway. So I'm sort of in that camp. So this last part of what I'm going to say is really I'm talking to myself here, and I'm reminding myself if I want to get any better in the few decades that are left to me, then I'm going to have to use this formula, and it's a very simple one, which is that performance equals your ability minus the obstacles. Now, when you start the horn, obviously the obstacles are huge, because one obstacle is you don't know how to play the horn. And gradually you get rid of all the obstacles, you get rid of nerves, you learn better breathing, you have more stamina, whatever it is you work on. But at any one stage, playing any piece, coming up to a particular performance, there will be obstacles. You can't play this, you don't know the fingering, it's difficult, all those kind of things. So it's really a matter of making a list for yourself and saying, these are my obstacles right now. And this is where I say, I'm talking to myself, these are my obstacles, these are the things I cannot do, these are the things I'm going to have to think about, I'm going to have to work on. And then the obstacles should get fewer and fewer and fewer. And of course the other thing that helps you when you're doing that is, since the equation begins with the word performance, is you need a goal, you need something that's going to make you want to practice. It may be next week's lesson, it may be that performance you're doing a week on Saturday, it may be any number of things, but you need a goal. And I found that, I played second horn in a community orchestra for years and years and years. It was great fun, but it wasn't always challenging. So I had to set myself other goals. And one of the ways I did it was simply by taking lessons again in midlife. And I have a whale of a time, and it makes me work. It makes me take a piece, I agree a piece with my teacher, and I see him perhaps every 6 weeks. And we say, okay, you're going to work on that. And it's just like being a student again, except I've got a bit longer. I'm not writing essays in between. And having that goal is vital for me. And I know that in the periods like this summer when I haven't got much to practice for, I'm not getting down my list of things that are obstacles, partly because I haven't got a performance. That means I've got to check that list. So I'm just urging you to try, if there's any formula that anybody can offer anyone else, it's that one. And I suppose I'll just finish with the words of, I think he's now the late B.B. King, if I remember rightly, he has died. I heard him do an interview on the radio a couple of years ago, and he just said that for him, and even at his advanced age, for him, a day when he didn't learn something new was a day wasted.
You'll see that I started out as an opera singer, and I started playing the horn when I was 16. And in the absence of any pedagogy, I just did what I did when I sang. And I used the singing approach, the breath approach that I learned from singing, and applied it to the horn. And also, I had the Oscar Franz method book, and it showed that when you want to make a slur, you go da-e. And so that made me aware that moving the tongue inside the mouth had an effect on the changing pitch. And if you're a singer, you have no instrument, you really can't consciously control your vocal cords. So you have a concept of the phrase that you're trying to make, and you try and do the right breath, keep your throat open, and you are able to move all of the vowel and all of the, so much of the tuning of the throat to make the different pitches occurs by movements of the tongue. So if you're already aware of your mouth and your tongue, and then you pick up the horn and put that in front of it, it's amazing actually how much this can be helpful. And I didn't really make, I think, the final full connection between the vocal technique and the horn technique until 16 years later when I was doing my doctoral study with Lowell Greer at Cincinnati, and he introduced me to the natural horn. And with the natural horn, there's no valve, there's nothing chopping the air, and in order to make the adjustments, we talk about lipping the stop notes or using the hand, and both of those, the lip and the hand, have something to do with it, but much, much more with the natural horn is what you do inside your mouth and opening up your throat for the stop notes. If you don't, you get a really nasty, buzzy sound on the stop notes. If you try to play it like you play your modern horn, with everything very forward and like this, it's just not going to work on the natural horn. You can play the natural horn, but you're not going to get a result that Dopra or even Henri Kling would have recognized as a proper horn tone. So I wore a nice tight t-shirt that I can show you so you can watch my body as I breathe and do a little singing for you. And since I was trained to be a spinto tenor, I think you'll be able to hear me without the microphone. If you turn to your examples, I want you to look at this little passage from the Love Duet from Otello. And I want you to imagine it first without words. And look at it, just the notes. And think about how you might approach it with no other thought if you were playing it on the horn. You might go, da, dee, da, 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 dee, da, da, da. Like we have a articulation, a consonant that we'll use. Well, if you look at the passage now and you see that it's in Italian, and it has many vowels and many consonants, you come up with something like this. There were lots of colors, because different vowels have different colors. You notice when I got to dotted 8th 16th, I didn't go like I was taught in the New York School of horn playing. You know that every dot, you have a dotted 8th 16th, you take the dot and make it a rest, and then you go and you point the heck out of the 16th because maybe it won't project. And so you end up with everything that goes dee, da, ba, ba, whereas Lowell likes to call them ski jumps, right? But they're different. It's different when the consonants, notice the soft consonants. You sing through, you've got to think about vocalized. You can do this on the horn. Voiced consonants and unvoiced consonants. The difference between D and T, or M, or P, or K. You use all of these, or you can use all of them on the horn also. I wanted to show you the thing about the breath. People talk about diaphragmatic breathing, and I have to confess I didn't understand what I was doing when my teacher was teaching me. He talked about continuing the inspiratory gesture. So you'll notice when I start, I'm continuing to expand down here. Now that makes no sense whatsoever. And it never made any sense to me when I was studying voice, but when luckily Scott Whitener explained it to me. If you notice, I'm contracting in this area. The diaphragm is like pulling back on a syringe. It creates, the diaphragm muscle is unconscious, because if it were conscious, we'd be dead when we went to sleep, because we'd forget to breathe. So the diaphragm is engaged, it's active, it's contracting on the inhalation. It pulls down, creates a vacuum, and the air goes in. All right? What you want to do, ideally, is expand the rib cage in all directions. And you want to avoid raising the chest, because as soon as you do, the diaphragmatic action stops, and you also stop expanding your rib cage. Now, if you do what you want to do when you start to put the tone out, is keep the diaphragm engaged. Don't let it go. And then you're going to have a moment of total paralysis, because the body doesn't know. It's like, wait a second, how are we going to get the air out? We got to get air out to make this tone. What ends up engaging, the body goes to plan B. And you have very, very strong muscles inside your rib cage called the internal intercostal rib muscles. And so if you defeat the usual breath release of releasing the diaphragm and pulling in the rectus abdominis, you hold the diaphragm down, maintain the diaphragm through the beginning of the phrase, you have no choice but to engage the internal intercostal rib muscles. And those are what put the pressure on the air. And they are capable of generating way more breath pressure, which allows 5'2" me to go if I want to, and fill this hall. Okay? And I'm not going to make that happen like we do with our embouchure. You know, when we practice embouchure work. Yeah? I'm creating a state where I've got an equilibrium between the potential that I'm generating in here and the force that's necessary for the note. And the vocal cords happen to be in between. So I advocate an approach that the lips are just like that. They just happen to be in between. Okay? And then quickly, just to show you the vowel idea with the horn. If you have I can teach you to play the natural horn in 5 minutes. I did with this gentleman up at Dick Martz's place. Instead of lipping or whatever, I'm going da-hoo-ah, da-hoo-ah. If I don't, and if I don't do the who part inside the body, we end up with. And we end up with a scale. And I think actually you've probably heard that with the natural horn. It gives it a bad reputation. So, we're out of time, I'm sure. Okay. You can email me.
Okay, so I will in a few minutes try to explain you a little bit how the system in Europe functions for the students. First of all, in Europe, the music schools or the music Hochschulen in Germany are not related to any university. They are separate schools, independent. And until not very long time, every school could do actually his own plan of examinations, and so you had a lot of very different way and approaches depending on what country you were studying. For example, in Paris, you know that there was this tradition to prepare a prix de conservatoire. So it was not called a master or whatever, or a diploma, but it was a prix de conservatoire. In Germany, also it was depending on which state of Germany you were studying, you would become a different diploma, and the length of the study would be different. So now, since 5 years, all of Europe is going to adopt the bachelor and master system that you know very well in the States. So we are in the middle of the restructure of all the music schools now in Europe that will make your eventual study in Europe much easier. Still, I think there are a little bit different approaches in the study in Europe. First of all, the admission examinations is very important and restrictive. It means that not every person who would like to study the horn will be accepted in a school. And the level that we expect has to be already that high that we are going to be able to see in this entrance examination if the person really has a potential as a professional player. We don't want to create workless people. And that's why we try to be, from the beginning, quite restrictive. The studying is during 6 years in average. And we try from the beginning to know what the student has in mind in terms of a professional career. And this is very important, that you don't get frustrated if you don't reach your aim, your goal. So basically we have 4 directions. Of course, the orchestra. Most of the horn players would like to go in the orchestra. As you know, or maybe you don't know, but the number of orchestra in Europe has a tendency to decrease. So we have, especially, you know that in 91 the wall between East and West Germany fell down. You had in East Germany, before the wall was broken, in a country with 15 million people, you had 90 orchestra. 90 orchestra. It meant that in a small town of 50,000 people, you had a symphony orchestra and an opera orchestra. And after the wall fall, of course, it was not possible because the state was not able to continue to pay for the salaries. So lots of orchestra just closed, and there were a lot of fusions. And this is going to also to continue in West Germany. Now the radio orchestras are slowly dying out or coming together. And so this is on one hand very sad, but it forces us to have new ideas, and there are a lot of other possibilities for musicians that are developed. I will talk about it a little later. Then another category of students won't clearly from the beginning become teachers. Also, they have from the beginning a possibility in the music school to maybe to have the methodic, and I also teach these students, but the whole teaching is oriented really more towards pedagogical work. And then a category that I would call freelance. Some of them don't want from the beginning to be freelance, but just become, because they couldn't make it, maybe to make to one audition and to come in orchestra. And for those people, they have now in Europe many possibilities for work. For example, with historical instruments, this is a real market, and you can absolutely make a living as a horn player with the natural horn, playing only the natural horn. Or in the contemporary music. You have in many towns now institutions for contemporary music. So I take as an example a city like Geneva, where I also teach, Geneva in Switzerland. You have in Geneva one big orchestra, professional orchestra, l'Orchestre Suisse Romande, that takes care of the symphony and the opera house. Then you have a chamber orchestra that plays mostly the classic music, and where the horn players play natural horn, mostly. And then you have an ensemble that is dedicated to modern music, and they also have players that just are hired by this orchestra to play. My students in Geneva have opportunity, if they are studying orchestra, to make practicums in all these different orchestra. For this they have to audition, so very quickly during the study they are going to be confronted with the real professional life. Then, still a little part of the students are the students that just would like to study music because they like it, without really thinking of a professional career, but they say they want once in their life study the horn. And I think we should also keep some space for these people. It's not absolutely obligatory to study something thinking only in terms of a next profession, in your life. If you study philosophy, maybe you study philosophy because you just love it, you are interested, but it doesn't mean that you are going to become a philosopher writing books about philosophy or a teacher. I looked a little bit in terms of a percentage in the last 20 years that I'm teaching, and I found out that about 50% of my students got a fixed job in an orchestra. Some of them had to audition for very, very long. I think the record is a French student from Geneva who just won a job in Strasbourg, second horn, after 35 auditions. About 30% are teaching and freelancing. The situation in the music schools is not bad, actually. And for somebody who is really creative and full of energy and ready to invest himself in going toward the people to get new students, you can make really quite a good living with this. About 50% are freelance in a higher class, making chamber music, playing with fixed groups, chamber music, or even as a soloist. And a small part, of course, maybe about 5%, quit the horn one day or another, maybe because some women, because they got married and the husband didn't want them to be around with other horn players or whatever. And so this is about the percentage that we have. I think the big difference in Europe is that we try to, during the study, we try really to prepare the people so that actually they make audition during the study, and we like them to have a job right after they finish the study. So of course all those credit points and this stuff is very important, but more important, I think, is that we prepare for real life as a musician. Because if you just study the university and you have lots of degrees and so on, but you still cannot play a scale on the B horn, for example, or you don't know what's a natural harmonics, or you don't know, or you cannot play an excerpt properly or whatever, I mean, then it's a little late to start, after all these degrees, to start to prepare yourself for auditions. So that's why we try to combine this really with the study.
Yes, there's public school education for the younger students. Is it as structured as the Hochschule type of approach?
Yes, of course. Almost in every town in France, Switzerland, Germany, Italy, etc., you have conservatories, music schools. And the level of these music schools, of course, is very different. If I take now the example of Basel, where I live, there is an excellent conservatory where I don't teach, with the music school for the youngsters integrated in the Musikhochschule, the music university, so that the youngsters are starting as kids and they have the opportunity already to get in touch with the professional students. And so that they can actually, staying in the same building, they can start with 6 years old and go until they're finished.
Yes, right over here. Sure.
I just have to say, I really enjoyed Douglas's singing. I thought it was fantastic. And it was great to hear that he compares singing with horn playing, because I've always felt that there was a great connection, and that most horn players talk more about playing like singing. they will get better results.
Well, I mean, if you do take the time to read my little essay, what really made me thinking about this more was that I sort of find myself decrying the lack of cantabile in a lot of modern playing. And I recently bought a copy of I have to admit I hadn't had it before. I love the Kling 40 studies, but I bought his method book, and I was interested to find that he advocates really learning to play the horn. And this is, we're talking 1880, learning to play the natural horn first, and then learning the valve horn. And then I also found there was one copy that was available on Interlibrary Load of I believe it's 24 studies that have the mixture of hand horn and natural valve horn, and in it he talks about how distressed he is in 1880 that there's a paucity of truly artistic playing of the horn, and that everybody's playing it like a machine. And so I said, I see this is a problem that's been going on for a long time in horn playing. And I think that I think we have to be careful right now, because we live in an age of techne. Yeah, the dominant Geist is technology. And because we have valves on our instruments and we practice technique, it leads us to focus on technical things. And we worship technique, both in you think about how my students are astounded that I've got a 2-year-old cell phone, and how behind the times and not with the technology I am. I think we are in the process of losing entirely the touch with the Romantic age and the Romantic spirit, and that opera of the 1800s. This is really the heart of the utterance, I believe, of the horn. But if you're at a workshop like this, where we're all in the business, as it were, we tend to try to impress and be impressed by technical things. Like, wow, that guy can do that and I can't do that. Or, wow, did you hear how fast or how high? But I think our audience still wants to hear a beautiful melody beautifully sung. And our instrument really, if you look at the orchestral repertoire, look at the excerpts. If it were the clarinet, they would joke, they would laugh. You're like, that's technical? We don't really impress our audience with how fast or loud or high we can play. The horn has the most beautiful tone, perhaps the closest to the voice, and that's where the real heritage and the beauty of our instrument lies. And I really think there's a really wide open area for all of us to really spend more time with that and think about that more.
Thank you. More suggestions for eliminating ego?
That's a tough one. The whole culture comes down on the side of feeling bad about mistakes and feeling prideful if you do something right. I'd say the good news is you can practice it all the time, not just on horn. You need to detach your ego from the results. You can maybe find little things to do that happen all day long. My yoga teacher once said, if you're standing in line, say at the supermarket, and you notice that your line is moving a little slower than the one next to you, and it's irritating, go to the back of the line and practice detachment. Because if another line is moving slower, you might go, oh man, I picked the best line. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. It moves the way it moves. You can practice it when you're stopped in traffic. You can practice focus just about anywhere. We live in a world of constant distractions. Let me give you one example. My daughter, she's 12, going on 27, and I have seen her, I don't approve of it, but I don't know what to do about it. She is texting somebody while she's doing AIM or this chat thing in the computer, I don't know what that is, while she's, doing email and who knows, watching television. She does at least 5 things, and she finds that astonishing that I can't do that or don't even want to do that. I don't know how she does that. I don't even want to think about it, actually. I'm in deep denial about this whole teenage thing. But look for opportunities everywhere to practice this sense of calm, sense of focus. We have many things that come up that are a little bit like performance in daily life. I think with just a little imagination, you can practice. Say, this is another situation where I can practice my ego detachment, my focus, deep breathing. If you ever have to wait anywhere, you're on hold somewhere for the 19th time, try, rather than entertaining homicidal thoughts about the people that designed the system, take a chance to work on your breathing and your focus. Other than that, I'm open to suggestions.
Yes, right here.
What are your feelings about the Alphonse teachers? My teacher gave me nothing but Maxime Alphonse.
I'm a devotee of Maxime Alphonse.
Nobody's ever mentioned him around.
And it's sort of sad because the Maxime Alphonse etude. First of all, I really find it extremely droll. You get a little insight into the French mentality, when you notice that he says that book 1 is étude facile, très facile et facile. No. Then if you look at the preface, it says passages which at first might seem impossible can be conquered through a diligent and thorough practice. So obviously what he's saying is that they are très facile et facile pour moi. Not for you. And instead of like doing coprage, you have to have the right mentality for the Maxime Alphonse, because the coprage or similar kinds of things will take one technical problem and to build an entire etude. Whereas Maxime Alphonse, right from page 1, is trying to put things in the kind of context that make something that may be of itself not so difficult because of where it applies. So you're going along and he's got you up at the top of the staff for the entire etude, and then he says, oh, by the way, will you play this low G piano at the end of the etude? So, and the other thing is, and this is, believe it or not, entirely out of print in America, when the Agrell book was translated in the early 20th century by Goldman, the page about all the different articulation signs in the French system was left out of the English version of Agrell. I recently got the Leduc original edition reprint, and that table of articulations is there, and they're really, really important because they start to clue the horn player into using a wide variety of consonants and ways of emitting the sound that are much more reflective of speech, and really, really fantastic etudes for style. So I just can't recommend them enough, and I know that I'm sort of a voice in the wilderness, emphasizing them as much as I do in my teaching, but I really think they're fantastic. I'd love to see them be used more.
The Horn Call Podcast is the official podcast of the International Horn Society. The views, information, or opinions expressed during this series are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the International Horn Society. Copyright International Horn Society. Music by Brian K.M.